Good day. You are listening to the Bloomin Bodhisattva podcast, brought to you by the Rissho Kosei-kai Dharma Center in Oklahoma City. I'm James.
I'm Alyx.
I'm Jocelyn.
I'm Karin.
And we're the Bloomin Bodhisattvas. So, in today's episode, we are going to discuss the Four Noble Truths. Now, if anybody is familiar with Buddhism at all, they're probably familiar with the Four Noble Truths, maybe even though they don't know what they are. So, can you guys tell me what the Four Noble Truths are? All right, Jocelyn?
I don't know.
Just put a word before suffering. Any word.
That is better than crickets any day. That was just beautiful. So that is Jocelyn's sound effects.
Yes, any word, and then say suffering.
So it's
any
like
word.
Those little wheels in your brain were kind of going, and that's the sound that they made.
Exactly.
It was not escape suffering. That's number 3. Okay, so here, I'll go over it with you. So life is suffering is number 1. The cause of suffering is number 2. And then there is a way out from suffering is number 3. And then the path of the way out is called the Eightfold Noble Path. So that's fine. We're going to go over all that stuff in due time. Here's the thing. Most of us feel suffering all the time. We're in some kind of pain, whether it's physical or emotional or whatever.
I know I was in some physical pain earlier.
Yes. What Buddhism does is say that we're not stuck there, that we can find our way out, and it gives us the tools to do that. So this came about in the very, very beginnings of Buddhism. So the Buddha sat underneath the Bodhi tree, which was a
fig tree,
and reached enlightenment. Fought off the armies of Mara and all that wonderful stuff.
And probably ate figs.
Probably.
Because it was a fig tree.
Probably. So he goes back out to this place called Deer Park in Varanasi. And so it's a deer park because it used to be the hunting grounds, the royal deer hunting grounds for whoever was the regent of that area.
Poor deer.
And so his sidekicks, these 5 disciples who were with him while he was practicing all of this asceticism and starving himself for spiritual gain, they were there, and he goes, aha, I've achieved my goal, and I've seen the world the way it really is. I've awoken. And they go, aha, tell us more. And he goes, no, I don't think I can really put it into words. And they go, no, you have to put it into words. I mean, that's the whole point. You can't just go and get enlightened and come back and just not say anything. So.
I mean, like, if your friend walked into the woods and didn't come out for a couple months, and when he came back, he was like, hey, guys, I've reached enlightenment, you would want him to explain what all happened there.
Exactly. And so he did. And that is called the first rolling of the wheel of Dharma. And so, one of the big symbols of Buddhism is this wheel with all these little spokes in it. That's what it's symbolizing.
I think I colored a picture of that way back in the day.
Yeah, I remember that. We may still have it. So we talk about the Four Noble Truths, and so we need to define what that means. For example, what do we mean by truth?
That's a good question.
It's really kind of the most important question.
It's
Truth, Jocelyn? What is it?
The facts. No.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that is actually one way to look at it. I mean, there are things that you can verify that are true, that, that lightning happens, and when lightning happens, thunder happens, that, there's...
And you may be hearing some
There's
of that
material
because there is a
objects.
storm outside right now.
Yeah,
And we don't have good soundproofing.
yes, well, we'll be okay. So those are facts. So those are kinds of truth, for sure. What are other kinds of truth?
Personal truth, how you see the world, I guess.
So that would be kind of your code of conduct, your
Yeah.
your beliefs and
Yeah.
morals and values. All right. Now, Buddhism would say that there is, that those things aren't necessarily relative, that there is a way to be moral, and it's kind of universal.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
true, actually, yeah.
What does truth mean to you, Karin?
Impermanence.
Right. And that's what Buddhism would say, is that when you are looking at the world the way it really is, not the way you want it to be, you are seeing the world in truth. Very good. So, what do you think of when you hear the word noble? What does it mean to be noble?
Kind of righteous.
Okay, that could be, sure.
That's kind. I mean, there's of course like the nobility of like
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of money. I'm under like the lords.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It would be better if you
People.
said that in a British accent, but that's okay.
I'm under the Lord's
I'm under
favour.
I'm under the Lord's favor.
Very good.
He thought me good.
I have lots of money.
I'm sorry, the only British accent I can do is starving Victorian orphan.
Yeah, that's probably right.
So
No, but
Cockney?
not Cockney's good.
Yeah.
But that would be ignoble. So noble is like the nobility of Europe. Sure. There's
Yeah.
nobility today.
But also, when I think of noble, mostly like nowadays is, like a noble hero. Like they're
Sure.
they try their best to be the best they can be and do what they can to help. Kind of. That's what I think of nobility.
Right. So like a noble spirit.
Yeah.
Honorable.
Yeah, like honorable.
Honorable.
Yeah.
Sure. Exactly.
Good.
Right. And so noble for Buddhism doesn't really have the connotations of like an aristocrat, but it does have those the noble spirit you were talking about of being kind to others. Also noble in the sense that, the principles we're talking about are sort of elevated. They're like they're sacred. They would be embossed in gold if they weren't material. There's something that you should pay attention to. And so that's what they mean. All right, so for the first noble truth, life is suffering, we'll start off with a quote. The Buddha said to Ananda, "I only do one thing, teach about suffering and the cessation of suffering." And so suffering is central to Buddhism. That was his whole project, is why do we suffer? How do we stop suffering? And so let's talk about different kinds of suffering. Now, the first noble truth is that life is suffering, which means as soon as you're born, you start suffering. Now, what does this mean? And so let's talk about especially the unavoidable kinds of suffering that we have to deal with as human beings. So let's start with, first, physical suffering. Give me examples.
I have mosquito bites on my body right now.
Oh my God, mosquito bites are, I really do believe that they are Satan on our earth.
Yes.
And I have also heard that mosquitoes really don't contribute to the food chain, and that we
They're
could
only food
just.
for bats.
We could just get rid of them and everything would be fine.
I wish we could. They're like ticks.
I know.
They do nothing but spread disease.
Oh, it's just.
It's like your blood.
Yeah. Now, for the mosquito, I'm sure that they're living their best life. I'm sure. They really do. Yes, and stop scratching. It's making me itch too. All right. So, mosquitoes. What other kinds of physical suffering are there?
I had stomach cramps earlier because,
Tummy troubles.
living that assigned female at birth life.
Oh, okay. So, I think we can be explicit about that.
Yeah, I'm having the premenstrual symptoms.
And that is definitely suffering. Not that I don't know personally, but
Yeah,
I can
no,
certainly
stop,
catch.
stop,
All right,
stop,
yep,
no,
not
yeah,
mansplaining.
stop,
Stopping. All right.
Stop.
All right. What other kinds of physical suffering are there?
I have scoliosis.
Yeah.
My back
Yay.
hurts sometimes. Man.
Sometimes.
What about
Aging.
aging? Yes. Karin and I were having a nice a discussion about, how horrible youth was. But there are some bad things about getting old, and part of it is you don't heal as rapidly, and you have to take better care of your health, and you've got sort of perpetual aches and pains. And so the physical suffering is there from the very, very beginning. We have the capacity to feel pain. It's there for a reason. Now let's talk about emotional suffering. Now, again, emotional suffering, not the kind that you can help, but the kind that just happens. How do we suffer emotionally?
Grief,
Yes, you lose someone close to you.
anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes things happen, like, not that don't hurt physically, but they just suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we let things get the best of us and, slip into depression or.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, though, we need to kind of differentiate between letting ourselves slip into something and just things that are just sort of a normal reaction, emotional reaction to just kind of being alive. If somebody gets in your face and starts yelling at you, you're going to feel an emotional reaction to that, whether, unless you're like a monk who's just, impervious to anything.
We still have that deep-rooted lizard brain that thinks when thing yell at us, it's going to attack. Must go into attack, run, or freeze position.
Exactly. And so other examples of emotions. So grief is a good one. Feeling a threat response is another good one. What
And
else?
of course, my favorite emotion, lizard brain.
Lizard brain response. And yeah, that's just the real basic, run away.
Yeah. Fight or flight.
Or bite.
Yeah. Those things are built into us. We can't really control them directly. There are also other things out of our control, like what our culture does. So our culture has, and this is every culture, we're not just picking on America here.
Can we pick on America?
We can, certainly.
Yes.
Do you have any control, say, over Supreme Court decisions?
America would like to tell us we do.
Yeah. Real.
And so when you, live in a culture where, it may not be doing things that you necessarily agree with morally or emotionally, it's going to cause you pain, right? Because you see the way things should be and they're not that way. And that's going to cause you pain.
Also, what do you think about this? The way, our society, we have our norms, and, you can't be happy unless you have a certain amount of money or are married with children or, those sorts of things where I feel like they're imposed on us.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that can lead to suffering if you don't fall into those little cubicles.
Well, and I was reading an article about the physical effects of racial discrimination.
Yeah.
And, if you're in a minority that's discriminated against, it affects your lifespan, to the tune of about 15 years. You die 15 years earlier. And so you don't have control over that, and yet it is having an impact on your mind, on your emotions, and on your body, causing stress hormones, causing, heart problems, all kinds of things. And so Buddhism is just saying, all right, you need to acknowledge that those things are there. Okay, so first of all, why do we suffer? Because it's just part of the nature of existence. Okay, so that's truth number one. The second noble truth is about what actually causes suffering. And guess what it is?
Us?
Yes. Not us in particularly, and let's be real careful about that. It's our tendencies that we have in our minds and in our bodies to react to certain things in certain ways and to compound that.
It's
Survival instinct.
Yes.
It's the lizard brain all along.
And so we can't do much about our survival instincts, but what we as human beings do is we take our normal kind of evolutionary reactions and then we exaggerate them out of total proportion. And that's just kind of what we do because we have these big brains, but we still have all of these instincts that our animal ancestors had long, long ago.
Well,
Just
when we were
civilized lizards.
back when we needed these instincts, it was necessary to react the way that we do now to stuff that we don't necessarily need to. We don't have predators or we don't have to hunt for our food constantly and to constantly just try to survive. Now we're thriving, and we don't necessarily need them, but our brains don't know that. Our bodies don't necessarily know that.
Are
So
you gonna be the one to tell that to lizard brains?
Exactly.
Yes. Our brains are still kind of living in that very, very primitive caveman world of long, long ago. So
got
here,
the hee-hoo brain.
so here are the things that really mess with us. So first of all, attachment. Okay, so attachment is just where you feel that something in the external world needs to be a certain way for you personally. And so that violates both the seal of impermanence and interconnectedness. Okay, first of all, nothing else should live for you ever, except maybe a pet.
Yes.
All right, and also nothing is going to stay the same. And so our attachment to events and things and people causes us suffering. Now, we also suffer because a lot of times we bring it on ourselves in what ways?
By trying to hold on to these things.
All right, but also by blaming ourselves. So, how do we blame ourselves for things that are not really under our control?
I'm trying to think of an example.
Maybe someone yelled at you because they were having a bad day, but obviously they couldn't just be taking their anger out on you. You had to have done something wrong to deserve that anger. So you have to fix yourself. And it isn't their fault because it's always your fault.
And you can even take it a step further that says, these bad things happen to me because I'm an intrinsically flawed human being.
Yeah!
And I will never be. I understand. Yes. And I'm unfixable. I see this a lot, especially young people, that I'm just unfixable.
And you can take it even further that the reason why they lashed out at me was because I was incompetent or whatever.
There was something that I did wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we victimize ourselves all the time, and that is definitely an avoidable form of suffering. All of these things come out of ignorance. We just don't understand things the way that they actually are, and so we react to them in inappropriate ways, and those things cause us to suffer unnecessarily. All right, so for Buddhism, there are 8 kinds of suffering because, of course, Buddhists love lists. And so we're not going to just say life is suffering. We're going to make a list of how it's suffering, so let's go over the list. So the first 4 we've kind of already talked about. They are birth, old age, disease, and death. Those are just what you get from having a body. And what that says is you're suffering from the moment you arrive. And if anyone's ever been around a little baby, yes, they suffer a lot. They're screaming and crying about who knows what all the time.
All babies scream when they're born.
Yes.
Well, not all. I was not screaming when I was
you weren't
born.
really much of a screamer
The thing is, you
either.
kind of have to, when you are immediately born,
Yeah,
you do have to
they're
start
supposed
crying.
to spank you to make you start crying to fill up your lungs with air.
Yeah,
I think they
because
stopped
you
doing
have
that.
womb liquid.
Yes.
I was not, though. I had to be put in the NICU for that.
They put
Lucky
you in the
you.
cube.
That's
Put me in
you.
the cube.
All right, so those are just part of being, life, old age, death. I would actually say that youth is a form of suffering, but that's fine. That's all right.
But do you
I
want to
wouldn't
make
know.
it 9?
All right, so no, this is all good. The next 4 are a little bit more sophisticated. So one of them is where we are kind of forced to be in contact with things that we don't like, and we can't avoid it. So give me examples of that.
Maybe you have a classmate or coworker that just really grinds your gears. But every day, you have to go into that same building with them, sit near them, and just be around them, even though they fill you with so much anger and you wish you could punch their teeth out. But you just gotta sit there.
And smile.
Let it be, and smile, and grin and bear it, and everything will be fine.
I would like to tell you that that's going to go away after you graduate, but no.
No
it's
matter
not.
where you go, there's
Yeah.
always going to be somebody.
I'm aware.
All right, so
Yeah.
there are toxic individuals out there, and they are woefully unaware of how toxic they are.
You're just not going to be compatible with everybody.
No, it's true, and there are people. I mean, I've known people. I call them emotional vampires, where they really just suck the life out of you. Where you could be laughing and having a good time, and they come into the room And they do two things. First of all, they make everyone miserable. And second of all, they make it all about them. So you don't want to explain your problems to these people because they'll somehow say, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And then now they're talking about their problems and they just can't give or won't. Now, some usually can't. They just don't have it in them or they're just ignorant of the fact that that's how they're working. So we can come up with a million examples of being around things that we hate, like, the political system. But I digress. All right. So.
Or when you go to the hairdresser and they wash your hair and then you have to be given the dreaded hair dryer.
You don't like the hairdryer?
It's noisy and it's hot and uncomfortable and it makes my head feel itchy and I don't like it
You
at
could
all.
just tell them to not dry your hair.
No, because they need that for texturing.
Okay. All right. Okay. So next one, separation from things that we love and can't hold on to. Let's hear examples of that.
Your favorite show ends.
Oh, Parks and Rec couldn't go on forever. All right. What else?
You've had a stuffed animal since you were a kid, and it's crapping out on you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, I do know seamstresses that can put it back together for you. It ain't cheap,
I
though.
can put it back together for myself, so.
It's sad.
People you love have to go their own way.
Yeah, it's that kind of loss is really, really tough. All right, so all of these are forms of attachment, right? Okay, so disappointment of being of failing at something or not getting what you want. Give me examples of that.
Getting a bad score on a test.
Sure, especially if you worked for it.
Yeah.
Unrequited love.
Oh, that is the worst.
Ugh.
And
platonic love sucks too.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you only have so much control over what your heart does. And it has nothing to do with the other person at all. And so you've literally set yourself up for heartbreak there. It's still really painful. What about like things like not getting a part in a play or something like that? Like auditioning for something.
Oof. I experienced that last year.
What were you trying out for?
It was Chicago, my favorite musical ever, and I got a callback for my favorite character that I've been wanting to play since I was a kid, and that I wasn't even cast in the musical.
Oh, I know. That really hurts.
I'm sorry.
I cried for like 2 hours.
I know. I think we went out for boba after that, too.
I was like on the verge of tears the entire time.
I was just like, are you okay? And you were like, I'm fine.
okay?
And I'm like,
Oh.
girly pop.
And so, Karin, I know that you've had to do go to maybe curated art events where you have to be judged about whether your work is worthy of being displayed,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Not accepted in a group show. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, being an artist is
yeah, you
hard.
put yourself out there.
Oh,
you do. You set yourself up for rejection, and not
Yeah.
you don't lose all the time, but when you don't get it, it stings a bit.
Sucks, yeah, like me at the convention recently. I typically don't make that much, obviously, but I thought this was going to be like the time where I make a bunch of money. I'm able to sell off my stuff, and like people are going to love my stuff. And it kind of happened. Not really, though. I was a little disappointed.
Yeah, that's all very, very common. And we all look back on it and go, I totally set myself up for disappointment there by having unrealistic expectations. But you got to have at least some in order to have the ambition to go out there and get things done. It's just we can work on how do we deal with rejection. It's never fun, though. The last one is being attached to what's called the 5 aggregates of the body. I'm not going to get into all that. That's the Sanskrit name for that is the skandhas, and we're not going to talk about the skandhas. The skandhas. All right, let me start over. So the Sanskrit term for that is the skandhas, but we're not going to talk about that. What this means is that you just kind of get attached to the physical world. There are some nice things about having a body, right? Hugs are great. Food is awesome.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that are really
Feeling
wonderful.
the good textures.
Yes. I mean, really, the human experience has got a lot going for it. Our minds are really miraculous, wonderful places. We
okay.
are but they have that capacity.
True.
And, people get attached to pain too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they get attached to negative thoughts as well. And so, and then the environment, there are lots of things to get attached to in the environment. It could be technology, it could be nature. There are all kinds of things that sort of, get us out of our spiritual selves and into our more materialistic selves, like the mall, right? Okay, everybody got that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So, what do we normally try to do to escape suffering?
Pretend it isn't happening.
Denial.
Yay!
Denial. There's also vices as well.
Oh, yes. So those are distractions.
Yes.
And so this is why, people, drink after, they've had something horrible happen to them because it numbs your brain. And it makes you not have to think about that thing for a little bit. Other drugs will make you, kind of be in another place to where you don't have to deal with the problems that you have to deal with. And so you see a lot of drug abuse and alcoholism with people who are undergoing some really hard times.
Yeah.
Okay, other things.
Just in general, unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Like?
I'm trying to think of any personal experiences that I've had. Oh, trying to help others and distract yourself with other people's problems when you're suffering yourself.
Yeah.
I used to do that all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Too.
Yeah, especially if you're going out of your way. Now,
Middle
normally,
school.
yes. Normally it's not bad to help other people, but if it's distracting you, it could be, could be
I
thing.
mean, what I used to do is just put all of my problems to the side because this person right here who I care about and love, they need my help. So
Yeah.
I'm not important anymore. I'm going to just ignore all that, push them under the rug a bit, and help them, even if it makes me feel terrible.
Yes, perfect. That is a great example.
You're welcome.
Self-abuse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different
There's
ways.
a lot you can
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it could be physical, mental, yeah, for sure. And a lot of drug abuse is self-abuse. That's
Yeah.
really all it is. Avoidance.
Yes.
All right. Now, here's the other big one. Control. So, yes. So let's say you were broken up with and now you're heartbroken. What is the normal reaction to that? What would you normally do to not experience heartbreak again?
Never fall in love again.
Of course.
In quotation marks.
Yes.
That's not how that works.
No, you're absolutely. In fact, all of these are you fooling yourselves into thinking that you can actually do something that you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, but I've certainly put myself into complete isolation after a horrible breakup. Mm-hmm. I didn't leave my basement in Boulder for like 6 months. Oh, Sarah rants. So.
Good thing you live in a house with 3 other people who you can't avoid.
Yeah, we do pretty well at giving each other space. So that is what we normally do. So Buddhism is going to say, okay, those are all really unhealthy. Here's how to do it. And so that'll bring us into the next one. So the third noble truth is that there is a way out. And so even though Buddhism talks about suffering all the time, it's not really a very pessimistic religious philosophy at all. So Buddhism is really kind of giving us the tools to empower ourselves to make our life better. And so, first of all, it says, just look at things the way they are and stop trying to avoid it. So you have to accept that suffering is there and suffering's okay. Now let's elaborate on that a little bit. What does it mean to accept your own suffering? And give me an example of how that works.
I guess just acknowledge that it's happening.
Sure.
Acknowledge that it's happening and that you can cope with it in healthy ways that'll make you feel better.
Right.
And
Very good.
That's okay that you're suffering.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed.
Because
Yeah.
suffering happens.
So I do a lot of research or just try to pursue a lot of self-improvement and knowledge of well-being. And I find it interesting just how much Buddhist teachings are aligned with psychological principles. And particular, it's referred to as radical acceptance, acknowledging.
All right. So yeah, let's explain radical acceptance. That's I've come across the term a couple of times. So what does that mean?
I think fully accepting that this is how things are.
Mm-hmm.
And, at this moment.
And it takes a lot of effort, to actually, be able to acknowledge this is what I'm going through. I'm not going to try to run from it. I'm going to let it work itself out. And so let's take grief, for instance. How do you work your way through grief?
You learn how to cope with the loss you've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Letting yourself feel.
Yeah.
Definitely. And also understanding the stages of grief.
Yes.
And it's not linear,
No.
that you can experience whatever stage at any time, depending on the depths of the loved one that you lost.
And
The heartbreak
sometimes
you're
grief
feeling.
isn't just over things that you have physically lost, like someone died. Sometimes someone can do something that really hurts you, and you have to go through the grief of losing kind of what you thought of this person.
That's such a good
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you can have grief over the loss of a job or a career. I've certainly experienced that. And what do you need to go through grief? Time.
Yes.
And that's really it. And so that means you could just go, this sucks right now. This is really horrible. But what Buddhism would say is that this is not the permanent state of things. So the relationship that you were in is obviously impermanent because it's gone. But the pain you're in now is not permanent either. It's going to fade away, and it needs to go through its steps and stages to do that. And that's really what the healing process is about.
And sure, maybe it might leave some bruises
Yeah.
and things that'll affect you for a while, but it will never hurt in the same way it did again.
Yeah, and really bad hurts, like things that are traumatizing, they take some time.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think, too, that it isn't just time. Yes, time, but it's what you do with that time to work through it. In particular, letting go.
Yeah.
That lesson also in the Buddhist teachings, to consciously, go, okay, that's in the past and that's not now. And because sometimes people can be bitter for years over, a loss
Yeah.
or heartbreak or so, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen people that just descend into bitterness, and it kind of poisons them.
Yep.
They turn into other people. Anyway, so Buddhism is going to help you out with that. First, it's going to say, all right, listen, pain is not forever. And also give you some guidance about how to avoid exaggerating pain more than it has to be. And so we call this the second arrow, and we've talked about this before. So when something happens, you have an immediate reaction to it. Then you think about it. And when you start thinking about it, you have at that point a choice whether you're really going to go down the rabbit hole of horror and pain or whether you're going to try to let it go. Right? And sometimes it takes time and you have to do this, over and over again. But we've talked about situations where there's the immediate reaction and then you make a conscious decision to not wallow in it, to not react to it in kind, to not get angry, not get sad, and to just kind of let it go as much as you can. And this is what Buddhism teaches us to do. So awareness of how our minds operate is how we get out of the ignorance that causes us pain. And so we understand how craving and our own ego creates trouble for us. And this trouble turns into, the major vices that we see around us, like greed and ambition and hatred and anger and selfishness.
And all the other deadly sins.
Yes. Pride, envy, vanity, all of those things come from attachment, and a lot of times attachment to our own ego.
In Buddhism, they refer to it as monkey mind.
Yes.
In psychology, they refer to it as rumination.
Yeah, and rumination is when you literally start thinking things over and over and over and over.
I refer to it as lizard brain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think lizards have quite our imagination, and I don't think lizards torture themselves as much as we do.
Have you thought about how funny the lizard is?
Yes, in that way, that analogy totally holds. Sure.
Thanks, Dad. I
Anytime.
knew you believed in me.
I do. You and your lizard. All right, so there are two kinds of desire. There are sensual desires, for, things that look beautiful or taste good or feel good. And then there's these human desires for like power and fame and that sort of stuff. And so these are things that are really going to lead you down, some problems. It was hard to be, say, a musician without like wanting to be some sort of music star. And to spend all that time doing it. But after a while, it's like, okay, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to be a famous musician. I'm going to do it for fun. And that's really took a lot of pressure off. It was nice. So next Buddha quote, he said, "I have made the extinction of suffering clear like this. When one abandons their thirst, freeing themselves from it, and cutting off their attachment to it, their suffering will disappear." So this brings it all back to us. We are, in many ways, in control of how much we suffer. We can't make it go away completely, but we can do things that are going to keep us from suffering unnecessarily. All right, now, this is where the 3 seals come in.
They're back.
Yes. I did say 3 seals.
R.
Okay, so when we understand that everything is impermanent and that everything is interconnected, this helps us let go of our attachments to things. And if we let go of attachment, it helps us let go of desire for things to be a certain way. And then eventually that leads us to peace of mind. And this is what we mean by nirvana is tranquility. Now, this is not an escape. We're not trying to get away from reality. We're simply trying to face it without freaking out. Is that possible, you think?
Yeah,
If we try hard enough.
It's a practice.
it's practice.
And so this brings us to the 4th noble truth, which is the way out. And so the way out of suffering for Buddhism is called the Eightfold Noble Path, which we will talk about in the next episodes.
Are all things in Buddhism noble and the truth?
No, they're not. And so it only puts noble on like the things that are really supposed to be at the top, which is the noble truths.
Okay,
and
so
the,
it's like a pyramid.
It is. There is
Okay.
definitely a pyramid of things. So the point is that Buddhism doesn't just say, all right, suffering's really all your own fault. Go and stop. Just stop suffering. Are you stopped yet? Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
All right, good. Because because that's all you need to do. You're an idiot if you suffer. So stop being an idiot and you'll stop suffering, right? No, Buddhism is not going to say that. You should always love yourself. It's going to offer you guidance and it's going to offer you practices for achieving these things. And that's what we'll be talking about for the Eightfold Noble Path. So remember, all the way back to the beginning, we were asking about truth. For Buddhism, truth simply means clarity, seeing things the way they are instead of the way you need them to be. Got it? Good.
Yeah.
All right. So, what did we learn today? What are the 4 noble truths? Let's hear it.
Suffering.
All right. Okay, first, what about suffering?
It always happens.
Yes.
Life is suffering.
Right. So, because we're born into a body and that's part of our existence. All right. Now, what's the next one?
Causes of suffering.
Right. And what is the cause of our suffering?
being a human being.
Right?
Existing.
But what is the part of it that we can have control over?
Our reaction.
Yes. Attachments, desires. All right. And so the way out of suffering, which is
The third one.
what is the way out of suffering?
The fourth one.
Okay, exactly. So the way out is to be aware. It's awareness. It's awakening. Be awakened to how desires and craving and attachments work. And then the fourth noble truth is about what?
Eightfold Path.
The Eightfold Noble Path, or the Noble Eightfold Path, which gives you kind of,
Fold path.
and it gives you 8 things to work on that will help you deal with suffering in your life. All right?
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Bloomin Bodhisattva podcast, brought to you by the Rissho Kosei-kai Dharma Center in Oklahoma City. Stay tuned for our next episode when we will talk about the Eightfold Noble Path. Until then, our fellow Bodhisattvas,
Keep on blooming!